Good evening, Bahamas. Coming up tonight on our news.
The Supreme Court rejects the request of Rollins and Lightborn. The story coming up.
A mother mourns the sudden loss of her only son. That story's coming up straight ahead.
Why the AG says only criminals should oppose the interception bill. Plus, Blue Hill residents sound off on a new project. Welcome to our news and thanks for joining us. I'm Christina McNeil. Topping news tonight, Fort Charlotte Member of Parliament Dr. Andre Rollins and Montague MP Richard Lightborn's application for a judicial review into the late submission of the Boundaries Commission report has been refused by Supreme Court Justice Ian Winder. A major factor in that rejection, according to the justice, the lack of evidence to support their argument. But as you'll hear in this report from Kyle Joaquin, the MPs are seeking to take their quest to a higher court.
This result was not unexpected at this stage.
It's on to the Court of Appeal for Rollins and Lightborn. This after Supreme Court Justice Ian Winder rejected their request for a judicial review into the tabling of the Boundaries Commission report. The pair, through their lawyer Michael Scott, argued that the late tabling of the Boundaries Commission report missed the constitutionally mandated deadline of 5 years and that there are signs of gerrymandering with the distribution of constituencies. But Winder today ruled the team didn't present enough evidence, among other things, to support their argument.
We presented, in our opinion, there is always more evidence you can produce, but we presented what we felt was enough in order to get us past the stage of producing a good arguable case.
We felt that we did have sufficient evidence to support the application, as Mr. Scott has indicated, and so it was disappointing that we weren't provided with the order that we sought. But anyway, we will, I think, certainly file an appeal, and we'll see where we go from there.
Scott said they could have called witnesses, but he thought the team had thoroughly explained to the court that gerrymandering did in fact take place in the constituency of Montague, where Blair Estate, considered to be an F&M stronghold, was moved to another constituency. That letter St. Anne's MP Hubert Chipman wrote to House Speaker Dr. Kendall Major also didn't work in the team's favor, as the justice pointed out that Chipman's signature is on the letter. Winder said the fact that the report was signed unanimously didn't support the claim of gerrymandering.
The result today was not unexpected. It was gravely disappointing, but we will take the process. We believe that we're right on the Constitution.
Now the election process moves on and the Prime Minister can ring the bell at any minute. Scott said he and his clients are concerned about whether the election will be fair.
We want free and fair elections in this country. We do not want rigged elections or rigged, what I call, selections.
The reality is that there is an election to be contested, and Mr. Richard Lightborn and myself, along with others, will do all that we can to, in the meantime, get on the political battlefield while our attorney does what he must do according to the work necessary in the judicial stage of this particular process.
Now again, Scott said despite today's defeat, they're willing to keep going and take this as high as the Privy Council. Reporting from the Supreme Court for our news, I'm Kyle Joaquin.
Well, Fort Charlotte MP Dr. Andre Rollins says no one can be more of a political prostitute than Marathon MP Jerome Fitzgerald. This after Fitzgerald, in an interview with our news yesterday, called Rollins a political prostitute extraordinaire.
He has sold his soul on the altar of political and financial greed. And he and his family should be ashamed of him. Well, Jerome Fitzgerald won't be ashamed of himself because he has no shame. If he did, he wouldn't have allowed the poor, innocent people that he claims to represent to wallow in contaminated water filled with toxins that can cause cancer and death.
Fitzgerald's statement was sparked by a comment Rollins made in Parliament last week that he would do what he must to get back with the F&M to ensure the PLP is defeated. It also became the topic of this morning's Tribune cartoon, but Rollins got a bit personal today in responding to the Marathon MP.
That big nose that you see Fitzgerald has, those bumps on that nose, those are not acne bumps. Those are devil's horns coming out of that big nose of his. Because see, nothing wrong with having a big nose, but the devil's horns, that's the problem. And so, you know, I understand you all laughing, but I'm serious with this. He has sold his soul to the devil many times over, and he will do anything to try and survive politically in this country.
Meanwhile, the Attorney General is once again defending the Interception of Communications bill, asserting listening is already happening in the Bahamas, and anyone opposed to the new bill is not serious about crime. Allison Maynard Gibson declared that we are in the emergency room and government must address crime right now. Fonique 2 tells us more.
Arguing that police already have the ability to listen in on people's conversations, Attorney General Allison Maynard Gibson said today she is shocked that anyone would question the integrity of the Supreme Court, which she asserted would never allow anyone's privacy to be violated. FNM leader Dr. Hubert Mennis said the Interception of Communications bill should not be allowed to stand. Maynard Gibson says as someone who hopes to lead the country, Mennis should know better.
People who are spreading alternative facts, those alternative facts ultimately question the integrity and the independence of the Supreme Court of the Commonwealth of the Bahamas, and we as citizens ought to be concerned about that. And also, I am really shocked that Mr. Mennis, who wants to lead this country one day, is questioning the independence of the Supreme Court and the capacity of the independent Supreme Court to protect the rights, including privacy, of our citizens.
The bill would enable police, with the permission of a Supreme Court judge, to lawfully intercept electronic communications of suspected criminals.
We need to address crime right now. We are in the emergency room. The Bahamians are serious about fighting crime. Nobody's interested. You think the Supreme Court would give permission to intercept and to find out whether somebody has a sweetheart? That is questioning the integrity of our Supreme Court. The Supreme Court would never allow a violation of privacy. That's a constitutional right. It is not a constitutional right to commit crimes. And that's what the bill is all about.
The AG says the Supreme Court would determine how long listening takes place and ensure that information is destroyed. Any violation of this bill, she says, would be a criminal offense. By putting these protections in the hands of the independent judiciary, Maynard Gibson said Bahamians can be satisfied that there would be no abuse.
And listening goes on right now. And the decision to listen is being made right now only by the Commissioner of Police, who consults the Attorney General. The new bill, I want to be clear about this, provides that permission may only be given by the independent Supreme Court. That is a protection.
The AG says experts have advised that without this crime-fighting tool, drug and gun trafficking and other gang-related crime will increase.
And we believe that law-abiding citizens want us to fight crime. The only people who could be opposed to this bill, I believe, are people who are not serious about fighting crime. Law-abiding citizens have nothing to be concerned about.
Reporting for our News, I'm Fonique 2.
In other news, a mother carried out her usual morning routine last Monday, getting her children ready for school. According to the mother, the owner of her son's daycare service picked him up for school that morning, and a few hours later, she received a heartbreaking phone call that would change her life forever. Giorgio Bain has more.
A mother is mourning the sudden passing of her only son. Her 3-year-old boy was left unattended in a vehicle, and now she's calling on the community for answers.
And they leave the guy, the young boy, inside of the car, and the son parked for past 3 hours. And then when they remember him to go and back, and now they see he already gone.
This photo of Caden and his mother was taken one day before the little boy lost his life. Today, as his mother struggles to put the pieces back together, she reflected on the short life of her only son.
Caden does good job. I'm very, very miss Caden. I don't find Caden back.
Moments after the school called Rosemary to tell her that Caden had been taken to the hospital unresponsive, she called her pastor, Francis Wilson, who said as a father he still cannot digest the news.
She give him some tea, and the child say, "Okay, mom, bye. I'm going to school." Around 12:30, and a police officer called her, say that your child cannot breathe. They say, "We wait for you at the hospital." When she reached to the hospital, a doctor called her what now, say your child cannot breathe. She said, how come? Because I did not send a sick child to school. How my child cannot breathe? Now the doctor say, okay, ma'am, just relax. Your child is gone. Now she go in the room, grab the child, pour the child on her shoulder, and the blood come from his nose to her clothes.
According to Rosemary, her son was the sweetest 3-year-old anyone could meet.
Mommy, I love you. Yes, I love you too, Kaden.
Funeral director of Rock of Ages Funeral Chapel, Camuel Cox, will host a candlelight vigil to assist with funeral costs for Kaden.
We are now having a candlelight vigil, on Thursday at 7 p.m. at the 5 Pound lot.
Kaden's mother, who says she has not heard from the daycare since the passing of her son, is asking that they reach out to her so that she can get some form of answer. Reporting for our news, I'm Georgia Bain.
Well, residents of Blue Hills Estates are livid after learning of plans already in motion for the construction of a new main post office building at the entrance to their neighborhood. Tempers flared Monday night during a town hall meeting to discuss the ongoing construction.
I'm glad Mr. Davis is here. Yeah, I know you just reached. Late again. People got to be, you can't take people for granted. Sorry.
This is a poorly organized meeting. Number one, we as persons in this community have not had any knowledge as to what was being transpired in this community pertaining to that building, access, exit, and if this church have a particular event, God help us getting in and out of here.
The problem we have is all of our government has failed us. They have allowed foreigners to come and tell us how to live in a neighborhood that they don't even live.
Garden Hills MP Dr. Kendall Major even admitted that he too was blindsided when construction began 2 weeks ago at the old City Market building.
Like many of the residents here tonight, I too was unaware and blindsided by the plans that you see before you, until one resident wrote me, as a good citizen ought to do, and say to me that a wall was being erected.
According to project manager Christopher Simonet, that fence had to be erected around the property before the building permit could be displayed, leaving many residents in the dark about the project even as construction began. Simonet admitted that it is obvious the community did not know about the project before it began. However, he attempted to give an overview of the new post office, which will replace the old structure on East Hill Street.
So this is what we call the northern elevation of the property. This is what you will see from Tony Williams back. This area here is the old City Meat, the old City Meat shopping center. It's a two-story building. Excuse me. It's a two-story building where actually you would notice that the standing seam roof is being ripped off. We're taking that off and we're adding an additional 12 feet. That gives us a total of 30 feet on the building, 31 feet. On the building.
The new facility will be a public-private partnership between the government and property owner and developer Scott Godet. Minister of Works Philip Davis says government is entering into a rent-to-own agreement where the government will own the post office complex after a period of time. But before that happens, Davis says government will work to address some of residents' main concerns with the construction, including road access and traffic to and from the Blue Hill Estates community.
We sometimes in government make decisions without having all the facts at hand, and I think this may be one of those instances, and we intend to, having heard you, move to bring resolution.
Davis was expected to take residents' concerns to Cabinet today, promising that residents will have more information by the end of the week. Our News understands that the formal contract was signed 2 weeks ago and construction is expected to be complete by August. Still to come on Our News, the F&M takes its election campaign to Sea Breeze. That's coming up. Stay with us.